Why are there ideological conflict? Is that your question? Well, ideological conflict or conflict of any sort will remain as long as there are differences of opinions and differences of ideology. See, perhaps the word idea has come from the word ideology. And everybody has a right to their own ideas, and ideas differ from person to person. But when you've got a fixation, severe fixation, a rigidity about your idea or your ideology, and then this fixation can graduate into doctrine and a dogma. Now, when a dogma and doctrine is not scientific, when it does not have any standard of science, and then it can ferment into severe hatred to other ideologies. So ideology could be sport ideology, political ideology, economic ideology, social ideology. It could be in any field, an ideology or an idea. But do not get so immersed in your idea that it starts fermenting and then you start hating the others who does not share the same ideas or ideology. Because then it becomes conflict and then confrontation perhaps, because somebody can tell something offensive about your idea and then it can infuriate you, enrage you, and then you see in these riots, it's all about rage and fury and anger and hate on the other idea or the other ideology. So whoever is wanting to do a riot, you must pierce, you must drill into their ideology and do an investigation. And then you will find that the ideology perhaps is not a complete, not a total ideology that brings people together, that connects people, that joins the gaps. See, any ideology, when it's different from another ideology, has the potential to bring division, separateness, rift, gap, and split. But Indian civilization has an ideology. Since thousands of years, the civilization of India, they have an ideology of social, civil living, of how to bring together, how to join. So the word yuj, yog, means to join, yoga, to means come together, to join wherever there is gap, to knit it together, to intersperse it. That is called yoga, yuj, or the word join. The word join has come from the word yuj. This is the civilization of India. But then there has been a lot of other ideologies of civil and social living that did not revere subjects or objects. They would not revere the trees. So the Indian civilization gave respect, dignity to the ocean, respect and dignity to the rivers. The Indian civilization gave respect and dignity to the mountains, respect and dignity to the trees, respect and dignity to all the objects. And now, the innocent people that they are, or even very scientifically speaking, about the mind that they know, they constructed, manufactured symbols that represent these objects, such as the storm, such as the wind, such as the sun, the moon. So all of them are represented symbolically as an agency of the original. And as a method of the mind, they began to revere it. They began to exalt that sculptor, that object that represents, that's a symbol of something huge. They exalted to the position of almost divinity. And to show their respect and dignity to this sculptor, they brought things that so precious to them, like milk, water, butter, flowers, to beautify it, to ornate it, and then they would respect it, give dignity, to give prestige, because of their reverence. They almost look like they are sanctifying it. They found serenity in every object. This was the way of India. So sanctity, serenity, reverence. Now it is there in every community. See, the mind is mind anywhere you go. The mind is not going to change. The mind is, the beginning of the mind is the same. So the mind cannot exist without symbolism, without giving an alternate representation. The mind cannot exist without getting an agent for the original. So divinity is no doubt formless. Divinity is formless. but then the mind will create some kind of book, some kind of word, name and form, name and form. In India it's called Nama and Rupa. So anything and everything about the formless will find a place, suitable place as represented in the form. Maybe a book, maybe a meaning, maybe a word, maybe a color, maybe structures, maybe minarets, maybe places of worship, places of worship. The places of worship are just nothing but form. And people consider this holy. And they call that we do not worship form, but they consider all the structure and books and scriptures as holy. So if somebody defaces some word of this book, or some word is smudged or murky, and then the entire community of that people who worship this book and that minarets, etc., the structure, they become outraged, they become aggressive, they kill other people in a riot, that they say that they feel offended because you offended one brick, or they defaced a page or a brick of the structure where they worship. They've given holiness to it. They say it's holy. Even direction. There's a community that focuses on one direction to pray. And now there's an object there called black stone. A black stone, it's an object. But they consider it offensive to look away from it. So they become outraged, enraged, fury, anger, hate. So very volatile because of this doctrine and dogma and the hypocrisy that they think it is formless, but in effect you cannot do without the form. So people in India respected sculptors. They made sculptures of various things that they gave reverence, sanctity, serenity, and they exalted it to represent the formless. So their mind is stable. They become meditative and they do breathing techniques to handle the mind. So the science of the mind is fully, wholly represented in the Indian civilization. But the science of the mind is very mutated in many ideologies that has entered the borders of the Indian civilization. So the course correction is for everyone to understand that nobody can live without agency, representation, symbolism of object, of the formless in a form. And therefore, every human being born to earth is respecting and giving dignity to objects. They may not call it worship, but if they are offended and if their volatility is so high that they can kill other people, they can destroy the Bamiyan statues in Afghanistan, or remove all the statues in the Museum of Iraq, or do a riot and hate all that people that worships in temple, then obviously they are also considering object as well. Obviously it's a hypocrisy because their mind is entangled with objects. I mean, so much of hate, so much of volatility in the community that they find that Indian civilization, the people may represent it in an object and give reverence, and they consider it blasphemous and they themselves are severely attached. I mean, they cannot be detached. They are severely entangled with worshipping objects, and they consider all these objects as holy. Maybe in a book, maybe in pages, maybe in word, maybe in color, maybe in a carpet, maybe in a stone far away, maybe a direction where they focus to pray, maybe a cross or representation of many saints in statues. So statues and forms is going to stay. So this is one ideology that has perhaps hypocritically has gaps, distances between people, and they have to merge it. It has to be understood that the mind will always move towards object, whether you agree with it or not. Therefore, the completeness of Indian civilization is the father of all civilizations, because it is inclusive, it is generous. Indian civilization is charitable, it is pluralistic, and is accommodative of everybody's sentiment. So if one can knit this together, one can know that scrutinize the other civilizations and check where these gaps are emerging from, then you can get some understanding of ideological conflict and perhaps merge, bring things together. In any which case, everybody will have to revere the forms, because the mind will compel you to do it, whether you agree with it or not. So enjoy the diversity and variety of numerous ideas and enjoy all the ideologies.